On June 14th, 1969, 6-year-old Dennis Martin mysteriously disappeared behind a small bush while camping with his father, grandfather, and older brother in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. And although a search and rescue team were immediately deployed with additional support from both the FBI and even the Green Beret, not a single clue was found. A litany of explanations has been suggested, such as unseen predators, to kidnappers, to even the possibility of something supernatural. However, with all that being said, nobody is really sure what happened. Was Dennis's disappearance caused by a sadistic human predator, or is there something far more supernatural as an explanation? This is the story of the strange disappearance of Dennis Martin. But before we get into today's story, my name's Jennifer Walker Zen, and I'm a psychic, intuitive, and tarot reader. And if you like dark and mysterious stories from a psychic perspective, then I am the girl for you. And if you are a fan of tarot, please join me on my channel, Jennifer Walker Zen, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and put on all notifications so you don't miss any of my uploads. Now, let's get into today's story. Every year on Father's Day weekend, the Martin family would go to the Great Smoky Mountains for their annual camping trip. The park is considered extremely lush and consists of over 500,000 acres of forest ridges, streams, rivers, waterfalls, and wildlife. The park is situated right on the border of both North Carolina and Tennessee, and during that time, much as now, is considered the most popular national park in the country. This is mainly due to the proximity to major metropolis areas along the East Coast. For the Martins, this was much more than just a camping trip. It was seen as a way for Bill Dennis, Dennis's father, his grandfather Clyde, and his brother Doug to bond as a family, while simultaneously spending time in nature. The Martins arrived at the park June 13th and by complete coincidence met another family bearing the same last name, Martin. These Martins consisted of a father, Carter, and his two sons. Clyde, the grandfather, took a liking to Carter and his sons and invited them to stay the night with them in the Russell Field shelter. The next morning, June 14th, both groups set out for Spence Field, where they were planning to set up camp later in the day. After arriving at Spence Field, the kids allegedly came up with a plan to hide in the tree line, to jump out and scare the adults. It is alleged that the three older children went together, while telling Dennis to go down the opposite direction, down a longer path. The thinking was that Dennis's bright red shirt would give up their location and ruin the surprise. Once in position, the three older boys jumped out and successfully startled the adults. However, once the excitement ended, it was immediately noticed that Dennis was missing. It was about 4:30 in the evening by this time, and Dennis had been missing for only 3 to 5 minutes. However, Dennis was not known to go wandering off. And armed with this insight, his father, Bill, began to worry instantly and immediately started searching for his son. At this moment, Bill began experiencing every parent's worst nightmare and started walking down the Appalachian Trail calling his son's name, hoping and praying that at any moment Dennis would just pop up from behind a tree. Unfortunately, it never happened. And once it became clear to him that he walked well beyond the distance that Dennis could have covered. He made his way back to Spence Field to alert the others. At that point, Dennis's grandfather, Clyde, began an almost 9-mile hike to a ranger station located near Cades Cove. Upon arriving, he alerted the park ranger, Larry Nielsen, who contacted his superiors about Dennis's disappearance. As more search and rescuers began to arrive, Ranger Nielsen and the Martins began searching the trails in the area and interviewing every hiker that they came across. Unfortunately, this was to no avail. Meanwhile, 5 miles away, the Key family were out enjoying their holiday weekend together while walking in Rolling Creek, when Harold Key heard what he describes as the most sickening scream he had ever heard, coming from the bushes up the hill in front of them. He then alleges that he and his family noticed movement coming from the area where the scream came from. At first glance, it appeared to be a bear. However, upon further observation, it appeared to be a disheveled-looking man. The Key family's impression was that the figure was either hiding or trying to avoid them. As they watched him, he made his way to a dirty white car and drove off. After witnessing this strange behavior, they were left feeling a bit unnerved and collectively decided it was time to go. Later that night, while the search was going on for Dennis, it began raining profusely. In certain areas, the park became very muddy and treacherous, as well as it covered up the scent that may have been picked up by search dogs. The following day, by June 15th, the largest search in the history of the National Park Service had begun. A few days later, Mr. Keyes stumbled upon a pamphlet from the park regarding Dennis's disappearance and realized that that strange encounter he and his family experienced took place a mere 5 miles away from where Dennis had last been seen. He also surmised that the distance between Spence Field and Rolling Creek was about 2 hours. As he began to further recollect the night's events, he began to realize that he quite possibly had some vital information regarding the case and called the park authorities. He offered to meet them at the ranger station and take them to the exact place where he and his family had the strange encounter. Strangely, however, the park authorities declined an offer to come to his location. There were 2 lines of thinking as to why park authorities didn't take him up on the offer. The first would be that with so many people searching the area already, him coming by would just create more chaos. The second is that they believed his information was irrelevant due to the distance and timelines. Either way, however, one would assume that in this case of a missing child, any information would be valuable. It almost makes it seem as though the Park Service didn't want Mr. Key to see anything more of what he already had seen. In addition to the 1,400 people combing the area for Dennis, the FBI agents arrived and began to monitor the case on their own independently. 5 days after the FBI's presence, Green Berets, who allegedly were training in the area, joined the search and set up a base camp. Strangely, however, just like the FBI, they acted independently, doing their own investigation using a private channel for communication, and explicitly not wanting or needing assistance from the Park Service or local law enforcement. Meanwhile, Mr. Key was becoming increasingly dissatisfied with the response he was getting from the park rangers, thinking that they were not taking his sighting seriously. Finally frustrated and disgusted, he decided to take his story to the press, which was published, the News Sentinel. Mr. Martin, after hearing Harold Key's accounts, was enraged that he had to find out this potential lead from a newspaper and not the park rangers themselves. Upon Mr. Martin confronting the rangers, he was told that the Keys family sightings were irrelevant and that the timeline and distance didn't add up. Upon hearing this, Mr. Martin himself walked from the very location he had last seen his son to the location of the Keys family, Rollins Creek, which he did in 90 minutes, besting what the authorities said couldn't be done with 30 minutes to spare. By August, the Green Berets began clearing out. The FBI soon followed, at least officially. Due largely to Mr. Martin's tenacity, the Park Service did not officially end the active search for Dennis until September. After that, nothing. The interest in Dennis Martin's disappearance more or less disappeared from the headlines. It would take a stunning 40 years before any real focus was put back on the Dennis Martin disappearance case again. This focus was brought on by former police officer, filmmaker, and author of the 411 Missing series, David Paulides. David went to the home of Bill Martin and requested an interview. Initially, Mr. Martin was reluctant. However, after some convincing, Mr. Martin obliged. Mr. Martin reasserted that throughout the duration of the search, he believed that the Park Service, Search and Rescue, the Army, the FBI were not being truthful. He stated without any equivocation that he believes that information was being withheld. He also cited that there was strangeness of how none of the organizations searching for his son interacted or worked together. He claimed it was as if three separate entities were in a race to come to some conclusion, or perhaps a race to secure something interesting. Mr. Martin believes that the Key family held the pivotal information regarding his son's disappearance and claimed as much. Yet no one mentioned it to him, and had he learned about it from the newspapers, he believes that the Park Service claims of the timeline were not matching up or were inaccurate. And in fact, the claims he walked the distance himself under the time they was claimed that was impossible to do. Mr. Martin also brought to David's attention that he managed to track down the reporter who spoke to the Key family about their encounter many years ago, and was told by the reporter that what the Key family describes didn't sound like a normal person, especially the way they claimed that the figure was navigating the terrain. However, the family decided it must have been a person because it was upright and was carrying something over its shoulder. They thought it was a bundle of cloth or clothing. However, after reading about Dennis's disappearance, they aren't sure anymore. Mr. Martin asked the reporter why that information was held from the newspaper, to which the reporter stated that no one would have believed it. Furthermore, the higher-ups didn't want him adding it because they didn't want to come off as a tabloid instead of a newspaper. Mr. Martin additionally went on to tell David about Jim Reich, the FBI agent in charge of missing children's cases for the part of Tennessee and North Carolina. Mr. Martin claims to have been in constant contact with Agent Wright's office from the year of Dennis's disappearance until allegedly Agent Wright took his life. This fact adds another weird dynamic to this case that makes it all the more intriguing. With over 1,000 searchers called in, combing the area with dogs nonstop for 15 days, you would have thought that they would have found something. Even if Dennis wandered off, got lost, or succumbed to some kind of exposure, common sense dictates that they should have found some kind of remains. With that being said, though, there are two prevailing theories as to what happened to Dennis Martin. The first theory is that he was abducted by a child predator from the Appalachian area, or someone that was familiar with the area. This person was most likely someone completely removed from normal society. Additionally, this person was most likely part of a brigade population of individuals, which may have speculated it is why the Green Berets were called in. The second theory is that he was taken by some sort of cryptid, or perhaps mistaken for a small animal. Although there is no evidence to support this theory, it does support the eyewitness accounts made by the Key family of witnessing a large humanoid figure traversing the terrain oddly, and seemingly what looked like clothes over its shoulder, while simultaneously hearing a gut-wrenching scream. The third and final theory is that of a portal. Thousands of people go missing in national parks all the time, and most are found. However, sometimes those that are found tell strange stories. One such bizarre encounter happened to an anonymous park ranger, coincidentally in the Smoky Mountains. The incident happened in May 1992. The anonymous park ranger was midway through one of his regular patrols when he decided to stop and get some water from his canteen. He claims as he began drinking, he suddenly became aware that everything around him had gone silent. Thinking he could be in danger from a large predator, he backed up to a large tree and sat down on the ground. He was thinking was that he backed against the tree, he would be able to keep an eye out for any large animals without having to worry about anything creeping up behind him. As he sat there, he suddenly began to get an overwhelming feeling that something was wrong. Everything around him appeared normal, yet he could not hear any of the rustling, creaking of the trees, nor the sound of the water flowing in the nearby stream. It was as if he was suddenly surrounded by something that was muffling every natural sound around him. He began to be increasingly unnerved, and after several minutes, he decided to get up and head back to the trail. But as he walked away from the tree, he came to an immediate halt. As he began looking down, he was instantly filled with terror as he realized that a portion of his right foot had completely disappeared. In disbelief, he moved his leg forward and was horrified to see more of his foot had disappeared. When he pulled it back again, his foot reappeared. He then reached out with his right arm and was bewildered to see his hand completely vanish from sight. When he lowered it again, his hand reappeared. It was almost as if there was an invisible portal in front of him. Feeling a tingling sensation in each of the affected limbs, he decided to suddenly, slowly back to the tree and not to venture any further. After another 5 to 10 minutes, the woodland sounds returned, as if the volume had been turned back up. He slowly got up and extended his arm in front of him. Once he got what he considered far enough without incident, he vigorously sprinted up the rest of the trail, knowing in his core he had just narrowly avoided becoming yet another missing person of the Smoky Mountains National Park. And now that you know the story, let's get some answers. Join me in my investigation. welcome to my investigation on this story. Now, I'm going to give you my psychic impression and my feelings of what really happened in this story, and also a legal disclaimer. This is for entertainment purposes only, okay? So the impression that I got on this story, or the psychic impressions that I did not feel from my psychic impressions that this was a supernatural situation, nor did I feel that this was a portal. Actually, I felt this was of the human type, okay? So what I saw when I was researching and going over the story was what it looked like a car, long car, and it was very dirty looking. It was a white car, white vehicle. So in the story, it was interesting that the white vehicle had came up because that's exactly what I saw. And I saw a person that was draggily looking that took the boy. And he didn't, from my psychic impressions, it didn't seem to me like the boy was in a situation where it was something supernatural nature. It was human in nature. And again, I'll say this is for entertainment purposes only, but I would definitely love to hear from you guys in the comments below of what your thoughts were on this story. I always love to hear more questions. So definitely want to hear from you guys in the comments below. And if you guys like it this way, you want me to continue this way, and I hope to see you again for one of my JWZ mystery stories. And if you guys like it this way, you want me to continue this way, hit that like button. Let me know in the comments below. I'll be seeing you guys soon.